Cave, an original short story by Sebastian Iturralde. Walking alone in the middle of nature wasn't enough to clear his mind from an endless feed of thoughts. The memory of his struggles with money kept him from concentrating on the present. It became almost impossible for Pedro to enjoy the beautiful scenery that surrounded him. Eventually, reality caught up with him. Trying not to lose his temper, Pedro looked for a way back, each step reaffirming his situation. He got lost. Pedro stopped in the middle of the mountain, looking from side to side. Instantly, his worries lost all importance. Night began to fall and the cold breeze enveloped him. His only way out was through a downhill forest. Nature's common green quickly turned to darkness. His heart beat faster with every step he took. Finally, Pedro's heartbeat echoed in his mind, and the rhythm increased his desperation. In the distance, Pedro saw a dim light. That had to be the sign he was looking for. Relief gave him strength. He approached the source of the light slowly, controlling his breath to slow his heartbeat. The street light was alone, in the middle of nowhere, illuminating an unusual place. Pedro walked towards it. There he found an excavation site with heavy machinery. Civilization had to be close. The excavation site was wide, its tallest wall being at least 10 feet high. Pedro instantly noticed a large tunnel entrance and forgot his urgency. He did not think about it and looked for a way to enter the excavation site. It was difficult to see the cave from a distance. He walked around the edge, looking for a suitable place to go down the wall. Inside, he saw mud and thought that the place could have been a reservoir. Strong breeze passed through him, and the whistle of the wind called his attention. Pedro climbed down and walked towards the cave. The tunnel entrance was clearly a man-made concrete construction. He stopped a few steps from the cave to investigate and found symbols etched into the outline of the entrance. They had no meaning for him, yet there was a sequence that repeated 8 times. A chilling sensation ran down his spine as the need to enter the cave grew inside Pedro. However, his fear of the unknown was stronger. I couldn't live with the regret of not looking inside the cave, he thought. He took a step forward and entered the cave. Nothing. His fears disappeared. There was nothing special about the place. The darkness made it impossible to see deeper than a couple of feet. There was no point in walking in without a flashlight. Pedro felt a strange energy enter his body. He instantly felt rested. The memory of his wasted time in the woods came back to him, reliving the long hours desperately searching for a way down the mountain. All the dead ends he found. Wasted time walking uphill to find a new path. His need to go home became all he could think of. Pedro turned to leave the dark entrance of the cave and took a step forward. His face slammed into something. From top to bottom, he studied the invisible wall. There was no way out. Trapped inside something he couldn't understand. Hitting the wall did nothing. Pedro's efforts were useless. His heart was beating faster and faster. A chilling cold seemed to pull him into the cave. Pedro kept his gaze fixed on the outside, leaning his body against an invisible wall, waiting for it to disappear. Afraid to turn around, imagining the responsible standing behind him. Time passed and Pedro kept his hands against the glass. He felt a clear message from the cave in his mind, a thought that warned him of the dangers within the cave. The voice was slightly different from his own. Pedro finally turned around and the message became clear. He understood. Pedro was surprised by the familiarity of the thing he encountered. A floating light without arms or legs, floating in the middle of the tunnel. Its color was bright and a warm feeling seemed to radiate from him. The light creature backed away slowly. Somehow, Pedro knew when the creature turned and gave him its back. Then he saw a bright light coming from inside the tunnel. Pedro received a blow that pushed him outside. The fall took his breath away. When he opened his eyes, Pedro was on the floor in front of his house, ready to leave the day behind.